you missed ProQuest Part 1, and don't fret, there is a recording. However, there may be some things that you're questioning, "Oh, why didn't you cover that?" Well, it's probably because I either covered it in part 1 or plan to cover it in part 3. So so part 1, we covered an introduction to the guide. We went over pagination, how to achieve those top margins that change throughout the document, and formatting the title page. So if you have questions about those things, please go back and rewatch that first recording. If you've watched it and you still have questions, either book an appointment with a tutor, shoot me an email, or I can hang around for a few questions at the end. Today, we're going to talk about the proofing checklist, because if you received a checklist prior to October, the the checklist looks different now. We're doing things we're trying to streamline some things. So I'll talk to you about that. We're going to look at table of contents, and we're also going to look at tables and figures. Next time, November 12th, we'll cover really just some responding to revision, or how to respond, like the expectations to responding to revisions, and then some common errors that I have seen as an approver during the ProQuest process. So that'll be sort of a wrap up, maybe more time for actual deeper questions, so deeper dive questions. But here we taking a look at the proofing checklist. So this is a link to the guide overall, but I do want to show you. So the checklist now will just be pages 8 through, I'm sorry, not pages 8. Well, I think our page numbers are off here. So let me just scroll. So sorry. So the checklist that you will receive. So let's talk about what the process is real quick so this makes more sense. You will complete your thesis and dissertation. You will submit it to your committee for approval. They will say, "All right, things are good to go." You will defend it. And once you pass your defense, you will format for ProQuest. That's where section 2 of this guide comes into play. Once you have formatted according to this checklist, you're going to save that document as a PDF, and you're going to upload it to the ProQuest website, which is linked in this guide. If you haven't gotten that from your program, please take a look at this doc and read it top to bottom. Once you submit to ProQuest, I then pull that document and I pull open this same document here. So and I will go through the checklist of formatting to make sure that you match what the university standards are. If something is wrong, I will send it back to you with a list of those things that are wrong. I also try to include in that list a sort of how-to for some of the trickier pieces, like the top margins, or something we'll talk about this evening, formatting the table of contents. But the checklist that you get back from me will only be from this page, so page 9 through pretty much the end of this document until the supplemental materials, through the bibliography here. So page 9 through 18. It is a 9-page checklist, but as you can see, and maybe as a reminder for those of you who are here for the first one, each page of this just covers a different section and goes line by line, hopefully a step by step of what you should do to format that section of your text. So this document has had a couple of revisions over the last year. We are posting the newest revision, well, tomorrow. The rules have not changed at all, but the layout of this document looks a touch different because we've tried to make it a little bit more functional as a checklist so that you're not having to bounce between documents to figure out if you've done all the things that you need to do. So that is what I mean by the checklist.
Some of the verbiage is different in your checklist than it is on ours.
Yes.
So do we need to like mine was conclusions with an S and now it's yours is saying conclusion. Do we need to
Oh,
change all of our headings to match yours?
no. So I truthfully, and I don't mean this to sound terrible, I don't care what your headings are. and beyond the main sections having a heading that indicates this is chapter 1, this is my acknowledgments, this is my, um table of contents. What happens within the body of your paper is 100% up to you. Now your ed doc has some guidance about which headings you can probably expect to have, but ultimately those things are flexible within your individual research project. So I am not going to send back a document if you're so if you have a section that is conclusions or conclusion, that doesn't matter to me at i.e. ProQuest. What matters is that conclusion or conclusions is in all caps and not bolded.
Okay, thank you so much again.
Yes. And something else to clarify there, we talked about this in part 1, but I'll say it again. The headings throughout your document, let me see. Okay, so when I say main section headings, I'm referring to these sections. These are the headings that have to be all capital letters and not bolded. When you get to your subheadings within chapter 1 or subheadings within chapter 2, you can revert back to what APA says those headings should be formatted. So those can be bolded, like your subheadings can be bolded or italicized according to whatever style guide that you're working within. For most of you, that is APA. Um, as long as when you create that table of contents, start talking about now, as long as when you get to your table of contents, in the table, you are taking out that bold and italics. Does that Okay, let's hop over to the table of contents then and dive into that stuff. So this is the piece that I think gives beyond the table, but beyond the title page. The table of contents is the piece that I have to send back for the most revisions the most often. You so let's look at tell me if this switches screens like it needs to. Um Sorry. I'm switching back to the guide here. Did that change for you all?
Yes.
Okay, great. So in our guide, scrolling to the table. Eventually. Okay. So in our guide, you're going to want to look at these things to set up the page first. Um, a lot of people I see include their like dedication and acknowledgments in the table of contents. Your lists should be the first thing I see in a table of contents. So if you have a list of tables, if you have a list of figures, those should be the first things that appear. You should not put anything before the table of contents in the table of contents. All right, so that's what this little section up top is. You will include all of your section headings. This language right here is probably what we changed the most from the guide that you're probably used to, because it was unclear before and contradictory to what was actually getting approved. So here we say subheadings up to at least level 3, but you can include more. The only difference is if you include more than 3 levels, you need to be consistent in that choice. So don't include levels 4 and 5 in chapter 1, but then leave them out in chapter 5, right? When you put those in the table of contents. For those of you in the APA style, they have really clear directions for how to format your in the APA guide, right? There are clear instructions for how headings and subheadings should be formatted. Typically they are bold, they are not in line with your text. But so consult your guide for what levels 1, 2, and 3 look like. And include up to that level in your table. Um, so after that, the very first page of your table has to have a 2-inch top margin, again, referred to part 1 for how to achieve that. Maintain your same left and right and bottom margins that you have throughout the entire document. Center the title or center the heading, table of contents in all capital letters. And then from here on out, this is where things I think confuse a lot of people. You want double space. So you want one blank line. And I was opening a tester document to kind of demonstrate this for you. So let me enlarge this a bit. Well, can you all see it now? My whole screen.
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. Here we go. All right. So we're going to pretend like this is our table of contents. All right. So it will say, what is going on? All right. This is not formatted correctly, my heading, but so this is my table of contents. This is one heading. This is another heading. And this is one heading. This is these two lines of text here. What I mean, so when the guide says headings that are longer than one line of text should be single spaced, this is what it means. There needs to be no space in between those two lines of text. However, each entry on the list should have a blank line between it and the next entry. And what that means is that you just need to apply standard double spacing or one blank line in between each new heading. That throws a lot of people. Something else that I see, and I'll talk about this. Yeah, okay. So I'm making sure I'm not jumping ahead. All right. So let me, because this is going to bother me. I don't want to give you a bad.
So you're saying that blank space means just a double space?
Yes, when I say, well, what I found is that when it just said double spaced before, a lot of students were sending in stuff that looked like this. Whoops. Where there were extra blank spaces in between each element. So I tried to change that. I changed it to this language, a blank line instead of double space, to try to get folks to only leave the one line. But yes, it is a standard double space. So you have two options when creating your table of contents. Now, I know the EdDoc program, you all have in the document that your program gives you, where it's their guidelines alongside the thesis and dissertation guide. I think you have a sample table of contents in that.
Yes,
Uh,
included.
okay. So for you all, it's probably easier to create your table manually rather than using the insert table of contents. And I'm going to show you all how to do both because it's ultimately your choice how to do this. So we'll show you the manual since we're already here. So a manual table of contents would mean that you have, and I don't know why this is. Again, this is just nonsense language that I quickly typed. I'm just not sure why it cut off so early, why it's indenting that way, but it doesn't matter. I need to let it go. Okay, so we have, so what you all might want to do if you're manually creating that table is to copy and paste all of the headings and subheadings that you want included in your table. So I'm going to do a few more. All right. Your first step, once all of your headings are here, is to tab them over according to the heading level that they are. All right. And I'm just going to delete this because this is not doing what I want it to do. And I don't have time to dig through settings to, and it's still not. Well, okay. There we go. I'm going to force it. Okay. So you're going to tab over one time for level 2. You'll tab over 2 times for level 3. So within the body of your document, and those APA standards that say bold this subheading, italicize that subheading. Those are visual markers for your reader to know that this is a new heading level. Well, in your table of contents, you have to take those bolding and italics out of the text, which means you're also taking away the visual marker. So instead of the bold and italics here, it is your tabs that are going to indicate the level of that heading. So now I know that this is a level 3 under this level 2, which falls under this level 1. Is that clear as mud?
So
As
would
they say.
you say your level 1 would be your chapter 1 introduction, for example?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And then your level 2 would be background of study.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if you have more delineations under background of study, that's another level.
Okay.
And so once these are all tabbed over according to their appropriate level, all right, you're going to also want to type the page number that they appear on. So if this is my list of tables, then it might be on page 6 or 4. Sorry, I typed it in my brain, flipped it. Sorry, page 4 using Roman numerals. But the first page of my chapter 1 introduction is on page 1. Maybe this is on page 12. Maybe this is on page 14. Well, let's say this is page 38. Okay. So once those are all in there, I want to select everything in this table, everything in this list. And I am going to, if you know where your tab settings are, awesome. If you don't, it doesn't matter if you're on a Mac, HP, or Microsoft product, whatever. You have built into Word, your Word software, a help feature where you can type in the setting that you're looking for and it's going to take you to it. Here, you're looking for the tab settings. So I have done that and I'm just going to click on it and it's going to open this up for me. I want my tabs to stop at 6, I think. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. If your margins are correct, if you've got the 1.25 margins on the left and right set correctly, your tab stop is going to be 6. So here you're telling it where you want your page numbers aligned. All right. I want this aligned to marker 6 with this ruler is what that means. But just trust me on this. You want a 6 here. You want it to be right aligned. And you want these leader dots that are this option here. I believe it's the second option across all platforms, but just make sure you get the dot. Okay. And then you're going to hit okay. And you're going to go back to your list. You're going to put your cursor between the heading and the page where it appears. And on your keyboard, you're going to press the tab key. And it's going to automatically do your leaders and set them where they're supposed to be. Do you all want me to repeat any piece of that?
So put your cursor at the end of the heading. Like, so you have your heading and then your page number. Put it at the end of the heading and then hit tab, and then it'll automatically move it to
Yep.
the page number. Okay.
Yes. So at the end of the heading, but before the page number,
Okay.
press the tab key. Now, this is where, and I'm going to do them all. I'm going to go ahead and do them all. This is where you have to play around with stuff a little bit. So here's something else that I have to send back often that isn't clear in the guide, and then you wouldn't know if you didn't have this conversation with me most of the time. So these longer headings that carry over into 2 lines or more sometimes, you need this heading not to do what it's doing. So do you see here how the words cut in between the line where the page numbers appear? You need to come in here and manually break it up before that happens. So all I did to do that was hit my return key or enter, depending on what platform you're on. So enter or return. and just split that line before it comes over the top of that page number. All right. So that is how you manually create a table of contents.
If
Yeah.
we want to go back and do this, like what you just set up,
Mhm.
would we just delete out all of the leader dots that are there
Yes.
and
And then let me
crunch
show
it
you
all down?
yeah. So, and an easy way to see what you're dealing with in that situation too is to turn on these paragraph markers.
Uh-huh.
So when you see the ... and it just has the big arrow above it, that someone has entered the tab leaders. But if
Okay.
you see instead this and then kind of a break in between them, it's going to format it like that, right? You're going to see this little
Yeah.
blue line pop up sometimes, and you'll
That's
see a
what mine looks like right now, is what you just did.
so then
Because I was trying
that's
to figure out how to do it.
because someone has pressed the period over and over
Okay.
to do that. All right. So because we
Okay.
have our manuals in here, it's thankfully stopping the page number where it needs to be stopped, but it's still, you can still see there's a gap and it's, I'm going to send that back.
Okay.
So what you're dealing with here, if it's just this, it's only going to take the one delete key to get rid of it. But if
Yep.
it's this, you're going to have to backspace or you're going to have to highlight it and get rid of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is the thing that I send back really often is I call it wobbly, where people have manually, so I'll just do, another thing. They have manually pressed the
That is
period.
exactly what I have done.
Yes. And so
Yes.
what happens is you end up with what I call a wobbly table of contents where these numbers
Yes.
are eventually not going to be aligned properly.
Correct.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so to go back and reformat it that way, we would just take out all the leader dots that we made, like just take it all out
Mhm.
and push it together and set the tabs like you just talked about, and it should magically do what you just did.
Yeah. The only
Okay.
thing that you should have to adjust after that is what I just showed you with these longer headings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
And something else to note too is that you're probably going to want, as writers who have been writing academically for a while, your instinct is going to tell you to apply, where are my line spacing options? Sorry, one second. To apply the double spacing here, like this, like a classic line spacing double. And that is where you're going to run into trouble. Don't do that here. Do that in the body of your document where you want the whole thing double spaced. Don't do that here. Do your manual spaces so that it is easier for you to leave this a single space. Or you can, instead of manually spacing here, and I'll show you too. This is why I love this key, because I can also see where I have created whoops, what did I do? Whoopsie. To make sure that you've only got spaces in between headings and not in between the multiple lines of a long heading. So that's a manual table of contents. Are there any other questions about a manual table of contents? And then I will show you the insert option. Awesome. All right. The insert option is a little more complex. And again, I have created just a lorem ipsum nonsense document for the sake of playing around with these settings and showing you how to do them. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. All right. To do an insert, so what I mean by that, when I go to references, you do have this tool to insert a table of contents here. But in order for that to work, you have to have, so I'm just going to say heading here. We're going to just do them all on the same page. Heading, heading, whoops, sorry. Heading, heading. Okay. In order for this insert table of contents to work, you have to use your style settings. So that's under home and styles pane. So a disclaimer, if you're not on a Mac, your settings might be in a slightly different place than mine, but you do have all of these options. So again, find your help bar and type in this setting if you can't just readily find it. So you're going to want to open the styles pane. Okay. These are all the presets that sort of come built into Word. Why they are all so vastly different, I cannot tell you, but these are the defaults. All right. And so what you want to do for the purposes of inserting the table of contents for the thesis or dissertation, you want to come over here and either create a new style or manually alter one that already exists. So I could either create new style or I could select this heading 1 and go to modify. Once I'm here, I want to set this up so that it looks how I want it to look in my document. So if I'm using Times New Roman, I want to change this to Times New Roman. I want to change this to 12-point font. Again, I'm just going with the things that most people use. You may be using something slightly different, so change it to whatever you're using. But for the purpose of the masses, typically Times New Roman, 12-point font. I want to make sure that my font color is automatic or black. And because my heading 1 are going to be, you can name this whatever you want, but I mean, the numbers work for me, but you can rename this however you want. So my heading 1 is going to be each of my main section headings. So I know that I want that to be centered, and I know that I want those to be all caps. So I can also go down here to format, and I want to change the font to all caps. All right. So I'm going to hit OK. And I also want to check this box for automatically update, because if you have already written your entire document and you're now going back and adding these styles, you don't want to have to retype everything once you apply the style. So go ahead and hit automatically update, and it's going to change it to be exactly what you want. So I'm going to hit OK here. I'm going to go ahead and do another one for the sake of a visual reference here. So I'm going to modify another style. I'm going to heading 2. So this is going to be my subheading, my level 2 headings. So I believe for APA, we still want to change all of this to match the rest of our document, Times New Roman, 12-point font. I believe they're bolded for APA. I want black font color, and those are not going to be centered like my main section headings. Those are left aligned. My font settings are oh, sentence style isn't an option. Well, that stinks. Okay, well, bummer. So I'm just gonna go with this one. Oh, that's not it either. Well, unfortunately, that's not gonna, you're gonna need to manually capitalize these the way that they should be. Sorry, I thought there was a sentence case option here, but there isn't. So we're gonna want that to be like typed the way you want it to appear in terms of capitalization, I think. Yeah. All right. We're going to hit OK. We can also play with paragraph spacing as well here. So this is something to check for. I send some documents back because there's weird extra spaces and the student can't figure out where the space is. If you've used these style headings, sometimes this is where it is. So the default has this extra space before and after. You always want to make sure that this is set to 0 in these headings, so that and double if because you're double spacing the body of your document anyway, you might as well do this for yourself now. And so we're going to hit OK. I'm also going to hit automatically update again. Okay. So now that I've preset however many I want to preset, I'm going to select the text that should be a heading. So once I've highlighted that, I'm going to select the style that I want it to be. And it's going to automatically do that. So all I did was highlight and then click the style that I just, changed the settings for. So let's do that again for the level 2. And we get that automatic update. Again, this one you're going to have to capitalize the way that you really want it. But it will automatically all caps. You also have, I don't know, some people know this and some people don't, but you can also select the text, and this, you can find your sentence case here as well. That's what I was hoping I thought was in that setting, but isn't. All right. So we can do that for all of these throughout the whole document. Now, once I've applied these heading styles to all of my headings throughout my document, but only the ones that I want to appear in my table of contents. Now I can, I'm going to start a new page. So I'm going to go where I want my table of contents to be. I'm going to go to references, and I'm going to go right here to table of contents. Now there are presets here, but you do have the option to customize. Customize as much as you can. One bit of advice. Sorry, I don't know what's going on outside. This is an option. This is not a requirement. But I will say, just from experience, the document is much easier to work with as you make changes, if you turn this off. So leaving this on means that I can look at your table of contents and I can click on a heading and it's going to jump to that place in the document. That's awesome for a reader. It's not so great when you're still trying to edit your document. So I wouldn't apply these until you know for certain that you've got the formatting down. And it's unnecessary anyway. So I would turn them off. I'm not going to send it back if you have them on, but it does make it more difficult to work with. It gets a little, trust me, it will get a little frustrating if you're trying to correct things and it's continually clicking you and jumping you through the doc. So I turn this off, and I want to make sure that my tab leaders are the same as the ones I showed you before. You want these dots. You want them right aligned, and you want to show page number. So this is sort of your default, and that's great. This is the only thing I changed, was turning this off here. Let's look at some of the modifications that we can do. So if you happened to add more layers, more headings than what the preset are, you can kind of change those properties here. You can, let's see where I'm looking for. Okay, here. So if you are including more than 3 levels of headings, then you're going to come to, let me show you how I got there again. Sorry. You're going to come to options, and you're going to add, in the order that they should appear, those additional heading settings. So you can scroll here and see all sorts of different heading styles that are listed in your styles pane. But you're only going to need to do this if you include more than the defaulted 3 levels. So I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to hit OK again. Oops. Did I not tell it to insert? I didn't. So unclick that. All of this is done. And I should auto-generate a table of contents here. There we go. It did it. Now I wanted it to start on its own page, so I'm going to go ahead and space that down. But this is what auto-generates based on, you can see the heading styles that I pulled. Now, sometimes when you do this, it's going to include the bolding and the italics that you applied here. It kind of just depends on how you alter those customized settings. Now, this is what I mean when I say that the auto-generated ones are a little difficult to work with. So if I did look at this and I was like, oh, I need to make some spacing changes, this looks weird. it's going to look like you've highlighted the whole thing when you haven't. So make sure that you're kind of being careful and seeing this like light blue, and then you'll really know that you've selected the whole thing. And then I just want to make sure that my line spacing is set to the way that I want it. So I want 0 space before and after, because right now you see it does have space, but it's not that standard double space. So I want to set that back to 0. And then I want to manually, if it isn't already, right? I want to manually enter those spaces. What can happen, this is why I turn off those hyperlinks, because what can happen is when you start trying to manipulate this, you end up clicking and it bounces and it gets kind of frustrating. To be clear, all right. And so, okay, this is another great time to bring this up. So we just added headings here, down here. So what do I do now? I am going to right click somewhere within my table and I'm going to update field. It's going to add everything I just added. However, the downside is that it's also going to take away all of the manual spacing I just did. So make sure that you have all of your headings in really before you start messing with line spacing and all of that stuff. You also, sorry, have to make sure that you have a heading on this page. However, you're not going to apply these things to this heading because you don't want this in the table. Oops. You just want to manually make it look good. All right. And then once you click away from this, so you kind of have to play with it some. Once you click away, that highlighting goes away.
So as an editor, does it matter to you which way we do it? Like,
Mm.
if we've already got all the pages and everything in the table of contents, to me, the first option is the easiest. But does it matter to you as an editor when you receive the paper which way we went?
I do not care how you did it,
Okay.
as long as it looks like it's supposed to look.
Okay.
Yeah. And to be clear, I want to be clear about language. I know this sounds a little pedantic, but I am not an editor. I will not make the changes. I
Okay.
will just send you a list of what has to be corrected.
You're a reviewer.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
An approver, a reviewer.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, I do try to be as thorough as possible. I'm also willing to meet with students. Like if you've tried this and then you've met with a tutor and you're still like not getting where you want to go, I am willing to meet one-on-one with folks as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah. So those are your 2 options for the table of contents. The list of tables, so hang on, let me back up. You might have tables, you might have figures, you might have illustrations or formulas or whatever your research dictates. The lists that you have are different. However, if you have more than one of these things, they each need their own list and each list starts a new page. So, for instance, back in our junk document here, this is a table. This is a figure. I need a list of tables and I need a list of figures. Okay. It has each of those pages, each of those lists has a 1-inch top margin. I do want to show you, other than that, all of the formatting rules in terms of the space between lines and cutting off a long heading before it hangs over the page number. All of those things are the same rules as they are in the table of contents. All right. It is also the first thing that appears in the table of contents. In terms, if you look back in our guide, the list that you have here of sections, sorry, let me get to the right page. Ha. The list that we provided of sections is the order that those things should fall in most cases. There are a few disciplines where the appendices and the bibliography come at the end of chapters. So when I say this is the order, this applies to most people, but there are exceptions and you know who you are. It is not the EdDoc program. I think that's who most of you are in the room. So no panics there, please. All right. Excuse me. So I do want to show you a few things to be wary of when you have tables and figures. When a table or figure takes up more than 2/3 of the page, so if it takes up most of the page, that table or figure needs to be on its own page. So pretend like this is a very long table. I want to do a page break so that it's on its own page, which, well, hello. Of course, it's not going to let me demonstrate the way I want to. Why is it tied? Delete that guy. All right. So all you have to do is create page breaks. Please, please, please do not do this to start a new page. You are going to have all sorts of formatting problems if you do this. If you have already done this, not to worry. Just select them, hit that little backspace or delete button, and get it out of there. But to start a new page, please do Command Return or Control Enter if you're not on a Mac, and do a standard page break. All right.
Okay, I have a quick question. My dissertation chair was very specific when he edited mine that there should be no space after a table for words.
So, is he referring to the note that applies to that table?
No, like he said, fix all these tables, and I would have like a table on its own page and then like half a page, and then the next page would start a new paragraph. He didn't want any space at the end of a table before another one. Now, I understand starting a table on the top of a new page,
Mm-hmm.
but then after that table, if it's only half a page, he said, this is completely wrong. So I want to make sure it's right.
Well, I'll just tell you that that is I find that to be a style choice. All right. Um, and in most cases, I'm not going to send it back to you and reject it and make you fix it. What I will send back is when you've split a table across 2 pages that could have fit on one page.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
But if it's only like that little table you just have,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
that just fits on the top of a page to a half page, then I can put the text underneath it and keep going.
Yeah, so if it's less, if it's a table like this, I absolutely, where did it go? Oh my gosh. What have I done? Okay. If it's a table like this, I absolutely would leave text after it. Or before it even. But if it's a much longer, like say that is there an easy way for me to add rows? There is, but I don't want to. Let's say that this was twice as or 3 times as long and stopped, here toward the bottom. Even though there is room for this partial paragraph, because this has taken up most of the page, I would not. I would start this text on a new page.
Okay.
Technically, I think the guidance from APA is 2/3 of the page or more. But again, that is a style choice and it's not in the guide at all. Um, so, that's what you want to do. That's what you, I mean, go for it. um, and I don't necessarily want to negate what your advisors are saying. Um, so, and ultimately that's not something that I'm going to send back as an approver.
Okay, thank you so much. And I have
Of
one more
course.
question back
Yeah.
to table of contents, and then I have to go because we're over the hour. But
Yeah.
for
Sorry.
if I only choose to do level 1 and 2 headings, that's fine for the table of contents. But if
It,
I do level 3, then I have to do all level 3.
no, no, no. If your document contains levels 1, 2, and 3, then levels 1, 2, and 3 have to be in the table of contents.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So that was
Yeah.
a style decision between my chair and my mentor. They didn't agree on. But the new document that will be posted tomorrow that you're showing us will clearly say, I have level 3 headings. I have to put them back in.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I apologize. I didn't realize this was going to take us much longer. You guys have been asking great questions and I love that. I'm going to try to get through this last bit really quickly because I do want to show you a couple of things that happen that are kind of weird. So make sure that your tables fall within your margins. I send tables back often that are extended. It's not going to let me do it because my presets are not letting it extend. If you look at your top ruler, you should have these little things that you can click on and it will give you a line that if you do not move this, that is your margin. Make sure that the table isn't extended beyond that on either side. All right, so it should not be wider than your text, essentially. If you have an ultra wide table that cannot fit within the margins, you have the option to change the page orientation for one page or 2 pages or however long that table needs. You can change the page orientation from portrait to landscape so that it does fit. A couple other things. So you've inserted a table. You want to go to references and you want to insert a caption. All right. If this is a table, I need to change my label to table. If this is a figure, like the image I had before, you want to change it to figure. The reason that is important is because you want to manually, or not manually, you want to generate a list, a list of tables. So under references still, I want to insert so the setting says insert table of figures. However, this is for all of your tables. If I'm doing figures, I want to make sure I select figure. If I'm doing tables, I want to make sure I select tables here in my caption label. All right. That is going to auto generate my list of tables for me. All right. What else? What else? Let me look at my presentation to make sure I hit the whole list.
And did you do like the heading style when you did the list of table thing? Like you did the same thing how
You absolutely can alter that. Let me get back to it.
Now, I don't have figures in my dissertation. So when I'm doing my table of contents, will I just leave that out?
Yeah, if you don't have them, you don't have them. Yeah,
Okay.
you don't leave like a blank space for something that doesn't exist in your paper. So it's the same as like the copyright, that's optional. If
Right.
you don't have a copyright page, you don't create that page.
And then when we're doing the list of tables and it says table 1, like my first table doesn't start until page 99 or whatever it is. Will
Yeah.
that page number reflect when my first table shows?
Yeah, so it's going to
Okay.
function the same way that the table of contents does. It will show the page number where that table or figure begins in the document. So you asked about the heading style. So yes, this is a heading style. The caption that you're inserting, it's in, I'm glad you asked also. So when I click down here, if you'll take a peek over in my styles pane, this current style, this tells you what is applied to the text you have selected. Okay. So when I click up here, because I generated this caption as a caption, it is, it's current style caption. Great. So if this doesn't look how I want it to look, I can modify it the same way I did those headings. So I do my drop down, I do my modify, and I change all of this, and I have all these options to whatever I want. And it will update it here, and then I would just update, excuse me, the same way you can update your table of contents. Right click within the table and update field, and it will make the changes or will reflect the changes that you've just made. Yeah, so that's really all I had for you this evening. I know that was kind of a lot, but I combined those things because they are so similar in terms of the